And I'm going to stay, I was telling Sean, I'm relegated to my basement at the moment, so I'm staying off video to try to help myself a little bit. So if you could just kind of put yourself in terms of attendee and just tell us how you're doing today, that would be great. Matt, I did see that Minneapolis got like 6 inches of snow.
Yeah, just a normal Easter. Yeah, it was pretty weird. It's very sunny and melting quickly, but yeah, it was we had 6 inches of snow and we're walking around the park with the dog in snow boots again.
Uh,
And you're like, well, Midwest life.
no, I think I'm a sustaining member of the current
Oh, nice. Nice. Very cool.
every day. So I listen to Jill Riley every morning. So
Oh, that's
I've
so
been
funny. This is my first spring, so I fell for it was actually spring already, and
yeah,
I'm now seeing all the memes about like how how seasons work out here. Was it similar by you?
May. We're much warmer down here. We're probably
Okay,
8 to 10 degrees warmer. So
nice.
yeah, so we just missed the snow. The snow line was about 45 minutes north of us. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, Ildiko, and hi, Georg. I wasn't sure if you were going to join, Georg, if you were in the Inner Source Commons
I was there,
Summit.
and
Okay,
I decided
a
to.
lot of people today. Uh, so I have a fairly light number of things that I'd like to just talk about today. Of course, there are other things that we can put on the list. I wanted to just put it out there again that we're in the process of hiring a part-time community manager for the CHAOSS project. Again, I just want to keep this in front of people. Hi, Ildiko. And we have a group of people who are putting together, I think we're done with the call in terms of what the kind of the job requirements are. So I'm hoping to get this posted in about a week. My plan was to get it posted just on Indeed.com. I don't know if people have other thoughts on that.
I don't have any knowledge of what the online website job world looks like, but Indeed sounds good. Another one is try to think of it.
LinkedIn, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna lean that way. LinkedIn's pretty popular these days, but
LinkedIn.
I think regardless of where, if you publish it someplace, we'll help get the word out. I'm already primed to send it to Mary Thingball, who runs like a DevRel and community mailing list that has quite a few people, to get it in that right away, and then through our own social media, I think we'll hit a pretty solid audience right away.
That'd be pretty sweet. Okay, so yes, that was my other point. Yeah, I'll be looking to other folks to kind of help get the word out because we'd love to have the highest number of quality candidates that we can. Um,
Yeah,
okay.
from when I looked for a job last year, um, I think jobs were posted only on one platform, and
Well,
then people just advertise wherever. And if you're looking for a job, you're looking everywhere. So I think we can decide on one platform only to post it.
Yeah, there is one that some people I know have had pretty good luck with called ZipRecruiter. It seems to make an effort to match what we want with the people they send
okay.
us. I'll make a
Take a
note.
look at it. Right on. Um, okay, so any other questions or comments on that? I've talked about it in the past. I just want to keep it out in front of people, mostly because I'm pretty excited about it. So it's pretty cool. Um, so in terms of the mentoring, the Google Summer of Code and Outreachy, the Outreachy, I think we've decided on the person to make the offer to. We can't talk about it here, so it just has to be the mentors because I think Outreachy likes to kind of notify all mentees at one time, which would be, I want to say it's like the 20 something, 27th or something of April. But I do think that we've decided on who that person is going to be, so that's pretty cool. And I'm very excited about that. And I think we'll already have to start thinking about outreachy for next year because it does require $6,500. And we need to probably be a bit proactive on trying to recruit those funds or solicit those funds for next year. In terms of Google Summer of Code, I should have looked at the timeline, but I think our next set of events, and Georg, you had this up last time, but is that we have to declare the number of slots that we would like.
Right, at by the 21st, I believe, a week from today. And pay close attention to the time of day, because it's historically, I think, been London time.
Okay, well, I'll just do it. Let's just plan on doing it this Friday. How about?
All right.
2 days ahead of schedule, or 3 days. So,
Well, we can do it right now and then update it if we have any change.
good call. Even better. then we're a week ahead of schedule. I like that idea.
So what's the minimum that we want?
Well,
I've
I know
identified 6 high potential candidates. So I don't know where Grimoire Lab is in their identification.
Vermont Lab has 2 or 3, and I think the decision shall be made tomorrow whether we do 2 or 3.
I know badging is 1.
And you
Okay,
said
so-
6, Sean?
So that's a total of 10. If you ask for 3, I ask for 6, and badging asks for 1. Did I do my math right?
That's good math. 6 plus 3 plus 1.
Yeah.
So we asked minimum of 10 and maximum of 10?
I mean,
I think we do maximum of 10, like minimum of 7.
yeah, I don't know what weight they place on those maximum or minimum estimates.
Or shooting in the dark on this one. I mean, honestly, I have no idea what the process looks like under the hood at Google.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah, I was wondering, is it kind of all or nothing if we put a number that's like higher than they can assign us?
Like, what did we do?
I'm not
How did we
sure.
get 4 last year? Did we just was it just asking us for 1 number last year?
It still asked us min and max, and I think we did 2 to 4 and we got all 4.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's just do this now, I guess. I mean, Sean, what's the minimum you could go? 10 just seems super high. That's all. I'd be stunned if Google was like, sure, here's 10.
And I'm not sure I would be stunned, but yeah, you're right. It's high compared to what we've had historically. Although we do have a good reputation for mentoring well.
Let's just say
I'll
7.
I'll say minimum 4 for
Minimum.
me. For us,
Okay.
so that would be,
Down to
I
a
don't
minimum
know.
2, maybe. So let's say 7. That would be 4 for you, 1 for badging, and 2 for Grimoire Lab.
Yeah, unless Grimoire Lab decides they want 3, then we might do 4 to 10.
That's.
Or no, 7. I'm sorry, 7 to 10. Is that what we? Okay,
That's what
we're trying to find a
10 to
minimum number.
Total. Yes.
Yes. All right, we're trying to find 7 to 10. Then.
Okay.
And we
So
see what they give us.
Let's do that.
Okay, it's done.
That is good, precise. That'll work. All right. Any other comments on Google Summer of Code? I'm trying to move through the agenda a little faster today.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Just
Cool.
that I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too. Thank you, Georg. All right, done. All right, so if we completely space it off for another week, we've at least done our job. All right. So the continuous metrics release, I should say metrics release here. I'm moving on. There are 2 metrics that are ready at this moment. So one is types of contributions from Common, and then the other is new contributors from Evolution.
Yeah, and I think we decided we were at 28 days on our last meeting, and we weren't sure what the process was for actually releasing it. So we waited for this meeting to ask what if it's past the period and there are no opposing comments? Do we just release it, or how does that process work?
This is a good
Good
question.
question.
It's a cool question, and Kevin just turned on his video, so that might be Kevin to the rescue.
Yeah, so I'm working on the, so we kind of had some high level guidance on how to do it. That was the document that Matt created. And then Georg added a little bit more detail to it when he dropped it into the CHAOSS governance repo. But the, like actually how it happens in reality, I'm kind of working through.
Yeah, it's really the mechanical part. Like, we've approved it, it's passed the process.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's off cycle creates a different set of things for you to do, Kevin. And
so I'm dropping in the, so I actually have I have a pull request in right now and a review request for Matt and Georg. I suppose anyone else who would like to look at it, I would appreciate that as well. So I've added some kind of, I've added more detail to the release. So this is what it looks like now. The link I just included, that's what the release looks like now. Some of those numbered lists are kind of high level, just this is what we're going to do.
So, okay, I guess I have one question. I'm sure this has been explained to me before, but all right. So we've got Common and Evolution who have new metrics that are ready for release.
Yes.
And we have the CHAOSS.Community.Metrics page.
Yes.
Right. Shows the current release that was done in association with CHAOSScon Europe in 2020, right?
Right.
So these two new metrics, is the intention for them to show up on this web page? I think it is, isn't it?
That's my understanding from the documents, yes. And when it shows up on that web page, we also add some sort of label to the metric stating that it's part of the continuous metric release, and it's not yet part of the regular release.
Okay. And then once we hit whatever, July or something, some 6-month cadence, then that note essentially drops off.
Yes.
Those metrics become part of the next release.
Yes.
The official. Okay.
So there are some other considerations as well. So for example, on that page where the metrics are listed, we will then point to a static version of the metric page, right? So that static version is the one that we capture. It's a snapshot in time for the regular release.
Say that again.
So it's kind of a snapshot in time for the regular release, right? So it's static. We grab the page at a certain time, and that's part of the regular release.
What page? The metrics page?
Yes, the metrics page.
The one that Georg is showing right now on his screen.
Yes.
Okay.
So on this page, if you have focus areas listed by group, and then we come down to the actual metrics itself. So in the metrics, perhaps in the table where we have the metrics details and the questions, perhaps this is where we add the label for regular release or continuous release, however that labeling occurs. When you click on activity dates and times, for example, it will take you to the metrics page.
Yep.
Right.
We pull these metric pages directly from the GitHub repo. However, we pull them using we take a snapshot of it at the time of the regular release. So this is not the dynamic page. This is very specifically the release page.
Right.
On GitHub, if anything changes within this metrics page, it will not be reflected in the regular release.
Right.
So one of the things that I was working through on this release is whether or not we want to actually take that that static snapshot in time of the continuous metrics, or if we only want to do that when we do the regular release. The way I have it written right now in the edited version of the governance CHAOSS metrics release is that the snapshot, that static version of the page, only happens during the regular release. So during the continuous release process, this page is still dynamic. It can be edited, it can change. And at the top of this page, we would have a message that would say something to that effect.
So when you say it's static or dynamic, does that mean it won't point to a web page, but instead point to the GitHub repo?
So it always points to the repo. It's just that we have the...
No, I mean the workgroup evolution repo, for example. So you're going to build a page like we see for the metric you just showed us, but it's going to indicate that it's dynamic in some way?
No, so the page will look exactly the same, but the page is populated based on data from the working group repo. So for the regular release, that data that it's populated is a static set snapshot of the page that we've grabbed. For the continuous release, it's just going to point to the working page, actually, where all the work is done. So if any edits are done in that, those changes will automatically be reflected in the website. So, and then at the regular release time period, we basically freeze it, and that's what it looks like.
I'm trying to ask a navigation question.
Yes.
When I navigate to a rolling release metric, what I see is exactly the same thing as what I see on a released metric. It's the same format, the same link structure. It's just that if the work group evolution changes that metric during the time between formal releases, that page will actually also change. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
and then like in July, that essentially dynamic GitHub and web page and associated web page come July or the next release, that would then become kind of frozen in time.
And
here's the pull request I put in, by the way, because it reflects some of these thoughts.
Is this for technical reasons that are related to deploying the website, Kevin, or is this for a different reason?
So a little bit of it is technical. Some of it is also just the management of the release.
Okay. If it makes your job easier to have it be dynamic, then let's leave it that way. During that interim period, it's what it sounds like.
Keeping it dynamic also has a benefit that you only have release tags on the repositories and not one for each metric. Keeps it cleaner.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the dynamic for those reasons. And I can't imagine there would be any fundamental change. I mean, if anything, it might be a grammar, that nobody particularly cares about.
So if you drop down to list number 4 under the continuous metric release. So list number 4 includes include inside the metric markdown file a message that this metric will be part of the next regular release. All right. So and then I created kind of a format that might be helpful.
Okay.
And like this metric is a release candidate. The 30-day comment period for this metric begins on such and such date, ends on such and such date. To comment on this metric, please see issue number blah, blah, blah. And then following the comment period, this metric will be included in the next regular release. And we're missing the new lines in that.
So we should leave the comment period open through the next regular release even after the 30-day comment period has ended.
So I hadn't planned on that, but that would be we could do that if we wanted to.
Yeah, it kind of says that, and I'm fine with that.
I think we would remove that metric, this message here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you would just say this metric is a release candidate and will be included in the next regular release.
Yeah, we could change the message to but either way there would be a message on the metric page during the comment period, And then there would also be a message that would be there until the regular release. And then when we do the regular release, we would remove the message and then create basically a snapshot of that page as it is. And then it would go to the website like that. And then at that point, we would also create the PDF of the full metric release.
So it's not really a release candidate though. If it went through the 30-day period, it's just it's a rolling release metric.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it's in the 30-day period, it's a release candidate.
I see. And
After that, it's just waiting for the regular release to be.
So there would be, like in evolution, we've passed the 30 days and we have a metric ready for quote unquote regular release.
Right.
So we don't need any special heading on top of that metric for new contributors.
I think no heading would be better. I think it's less confusing for something that has passed the release window.
Right.
However, as noted, and Georg does have it highlighted, we're still dynamic. So that means that this web page can be edited, it can change.
Right.
And for the regular release, that's different. I think we probably need to denote that in some fashion.
So based on what Georg has highlighted right there, so you could say this metric is part of the continuous release. It's a part of the continuous release process. And that metric information displayed on the website may still be edited prior to the regular release, period.
Yeah, but it would have to be a message on so there'd be two messages. There'd be a label on the previous web page, and then on the metric web page itself, there would be a message there as well that basically says what you just said.
Okay, I'm typing it down in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a working group, we're thinking once we release a metric in the mid-release, we're not gonna go back to it, honestly. But I understand technically it could still be variable if somebody does. So this metric released on this date and will be part of the next release, but is currently a CHAOSS metric or something.
What about this? I just put something in the chat.
Okay.
It's just a disclaimer for the continuous release metrics.
Maybe and say N has been through the 30-day review period for those.
Okay, I put it in the minutes now.
And where would that go on the metric? Like above the question, above the name?
Yeah, maybe after the name.
So there would be two messages. One of the messages that we would use would be that this metric is a release candidate and the 30-day comment period. And then we would also have this message. And we basically swap them out.
Yeah.
Following the 30-day comment period.
Okay, so, and then I'm okay with that. And then Georg, can you go back to the metrics table thing? Oh, yeah. So then do we want another column here, or do we just want it in the metrics details, like where it says just pretend activity dates and times is part of the continuous release?
Yeah, I mean, we could put some sort of tag there, like just an asterisk or something. That it could be anything, right?
Yeah, I think simple is better here.
So we could just put an asterisk there and then have the asterisk message be, this is part of the continuous release.
Right.
So
It's
I
almost
have
like
a question. What is the value of having it both on this list and inside the metric description?
oh, I don't know.
So the value of inside the metric description is so there are two messages. One, the value for the one is that it'll connect you to the issue so that you can make a comment. And then the value for the second message is to reinforce that it's the content is still dynamic. For the list, when we're here, the value is you can see at a very high level which metrics are going to be on the next regular release.
So my concern is that if we do an asterisk or some text, it might not be obvious.
Mm-hmm.
What if we created a section like this and said metrics being prepared for the next release? So it's not merged into the...
So it's completely outside of this document.
It's inside this document.
Well, think of each section as kind of a document.
Okay, yes, a new document, a new white section here.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I'm fine with that if that's what you'd all like to do. I don't.
Actually, listening to you talk, I think part of the continuous metrics release is that we enable for metrics to be contributed over the course of 6 months per the working group.
Right.
And so to me, that is a contribution. So in the case of Common, and they have the types of contributors, I would like to see it just in this white section right here, in this page.
Okay.
They took the time, and it's not different from any of these metrics.
Right.
So
it's past the process. It's just
also and then I'm with Georg that adding asterisks is like we're trying to balance between transparency and information overload.
Right.
And does already kind of carry a lot of information. And so maybe we don't even bother with the asterisks here.
Yeah, then make it easier.
Yep, and then when you click on, again, I'll just pretend activity dates and time is the part of the continuous. Then we do have the disclaimer up here, maybe after the question or something like that, that just says, please note that this is part of the continuous release process. Possibility of change.
So do we want to have any sort of distinction when it's in the comment period? Or I suppose does it not go to the release or to this page until it's
does not go to that
page
with
the comment?
It does not go to that page till it's done with the comment period, just like a regular metric.
Okay. We just the comment period pretty smoothly, I thought, for both of those without having that statement.
But did we get a lot of comments on those metrics during that time period?
A few, but I think one got a couple. No different than what we normally get, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so for this last item, create release notes.
Yep, that was the other issue I wanted to talk about.
Is that adding a new section in here, things since the release?
No, so my thought on the release notes is that we only create the release notes on the regular release. However, we need to have a way of capturing the release notes during the continuous period. So similar to what we did in this last release, we have each working group create an issue that is release notes, and you just continuously capture your release notes within that document or within that issue. And then at the regular release, we can just go into that issue and pull all of the release notes out. Does that make sense? And then on the release history document, each regular release is going to have release notes, and it'll basically just match this same format. So it'll be release history, and then the next release will be release 2007.
So the way that I see the release notes is this is the document I go to see if there have been changes. And as we are adding new items here on the metrics,
yes,
page, even if they're for the continuous metric contribution, I would expect the release history to state that update because the website has changed. That's
so with the regular release gets a version number.
Correct.
Continuous release does not get a version number.
Correct.
Right? So if we're just tracking the release history without a version number attached to it, then the only thing that you're tracking in the release history is the it's not tracking the full release, it's only tracking the new things, right?
So the way that I pictured is something like above here, a heading says continuous metric contributions, colon, and then we have the date and what metric was added. And then that stays there until the next release, and then all that rolls into the next release notes with the new version number. And the section for continuous metric contributions is empty again.
Okay, so it's basically just a list that says this metric finished the comment period on such and such date.
Yeah, I don't care when it finished the review process. I care that it was added to the website and we changed the.
Right. Well, when it goes through the process.
So I'm sorry, I was taking a few notes just on kind of how we were going to display things. So what was on the release notes?
So Georg would like a list at the top of the release history that has a date of all of the new metrics that were released during the continuous
So like it was
release period. And then after the continuous release period is done and we do a regular release, we empty that list and create the release notes for the regular version.
So, okay.
Did I say that correctly?
Yes, that is my idea for being transparent that we changed the metrics pages.
Okay, so that I don't really have any issue with that. However, that does not negate needing to have the work groups track their
Correct.
release notes and their release history over continuously, right? So if we look at all of the stuff that we have in the release notes currently, if it's a continuous release, I think the working groups need to make some detailed notes somewhere within an issue so that we can populate a more detailed release notes during the regular release. And we can still have that, continuous release list at the top of the release notes. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree with that.
So I'm trying to jot down what's going on here. So so if I know you're taking notes, Georg. Can you go, when you're done, go back? Okay. So just a few questions. This is making sense, but could you go back to the tab? So this, it would have I'm thinking just super pragmatically here. So it would have the top title would be release history still. Like H1 would be release history.
Yep.
H2 would be continuous metric contributions since last release. Like that's the next immediate heading under release history, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then whatever comments go in there, like any new metrics that were released. And then the next H2 is release 2020-01 notes. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then when we do a 2020-07 release, will the order be release history, release 2020-07 notes, and then continuous metrics release, and then
No, I think continuous metrics always stays at the top. That list just empties out.
that's fine. Okay, that's helpful. And then we do not create a PDF for the continuous metrics releases, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And I mean, okay. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I can go into each of the working groups and just create the issue for the release notes.
Okay. Okay, so then I think based on this, we'll have to update the handbook a little bit, but Kevin, I think you probably have what you need to get this done at this point.
Yep, I think so. Most of it matches the edits that I made to the release handbook.
Okay.
However, there are a few details that would change a little bit. So I would still, if Georg has time, I would appreciate it if he could take a peek at that document or the pull request. And I've been making notes in the pull request itself.
Okay.
As we've been talking about this, so.
Okay. This is helpful. Thank you. Is there anything else on this?
I don't think so. I think those were the two main issues.
That was okay. That was a good conversation. That was nice to kind of square that away.
Yeah.
It took longer than I thought, but I think that was time well spent.
So if we decide to add a couple of filters to a pull request or to a metric definition in the interim period, do we process that as an interim release because it's already a released metric, or do we just let that update sit and wait for the next final release? And I would advocate just letting it sit and waiting for the next release because it's just it's a change to an existing metric. And that would break the process we just described for new metrics.
Yeah,
So
I agree to keep already released metrics stable.
Right. And then ones that are changed, they would be released with the next formal releases, because literally we added 2 filters, 2 lines to one of the evolution metrics. And I don't want to break. That seems fine to like wait until the next formal release.
I agree. I agree.
So somebody make a note of that.
Let's not break this right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any reason that you can't just send out a note to the email list and do a 30-day comment period?
We did, but see, then it would take a metric that you've already published as released and shift it back to not released.
Oh.
And change and then the PDF would be different. It kind of seems to break this process a little bit. So
right.
I'm saying just like let it be.
So metrics that have gone through the regular release cycle are just frozen until the next regular release.
Yeah, and that seems reasonable to me. That
okay.
You know. Yep, I agree. Just like wait 3 months and go.
Because literally, it's like 2 lines, additional filters. It's
and we don't have a process how to roll a frozen release back to a continuous release.
Right, and I don't want to create that process. I don't want anyone to have to do that process.
So I would say that we need to capture that in the release notes issue, And we also need to capture that within the that spreadsheet document.
One thing that we can do at the time of release is do a diff between the release tag and the current master version. So in case we forgot to maintain the release notes, we can check what changes we have made to the release metrics.
That's a good idea. All right, cool. Thank you.
So, is that spreadsheet document is that a stable enough link to include in the release handbook?
Yeah, I mean, we use it. It's pretty
Okay.
clean at this point.
Okay, so I did add that link to the
I've got no problem with that.
handbook. Okay.
For those of you who are not familiar with the spreadsheet and the history, just to fill you in a little bit, it came out of the diversity and inclusion working group when we were ranking different metrics, and then it was picked up by other working groups to do a similar exercise, and then it evolved into managing the releases and keeping track of where we are on the release cycle. So the same spreadsheet has seen many uses.
And I find it to be incredibly helpful across all working groups in tracking metrics.
When I'm doing the release, that's primarily what I work from. So
it's a great document. So, all right, cool. I have one. I'm gonna skip this issue metric thing for just a second, and then go down to podcast, just because I think Georg has some updates that I'd probably like to talk about. So, Georg, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the podcast. We now have a website for the podcast, and this was something, well, before that, I assume you all have read the email that I sent with 20 million thousand updates on changing the name back and all the process that is happening in the background. So just on the name real quick, we were thinking about CHAOSS.Cast a couple weeks ago, and then changed it to be something more descriptive that we would have better chance of showing up in search results. And then when we onboarded to the Code Fund podcast network, Justin suggested to just keep it as short as possible. And so we went back to CHAOSS.Cast, and we will do all the search engine optimization and search terms and all that through the description of the podcast and the description of the episodes. And we had Matt Broberg and I had a really good session last night with Venya, Logan, and Dylan about how to do this search engine optimization and so on. So really good work there. We have the website. We were talking about, do we want a subdomain? Do we want it somewhere else on the website? And we are hosting the podcast on Fireside. And so the domain would have been chaosscast.fireside.fm. And Justin suggested that we use our own subdomain and use a CNAME forwarding so that in case we want to move the podcast somewhere else in the future away from Fireside, we can do that without breaking anything. Well, breaking less, let's put it that way. And so we own this space for the podcast. That's why we have a subdomain. And we were thinking about integrating it. We could just have the subdomain and ignore that it exists and list all the podcast episodes on the website with the CHAOSS.Community.Podcast or whatever, but that would require building out the WordPress we have to pull in the episodes and all that. And I think that's a lot more work. So
Ask a question.
yes.
So right now, are all of the recordings going to be at chaosscast.fireside.fm?
They will be at, so this is,
Okay.
doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's forwarded now to the podcast.chaos.community.
I see. Okay,
Right.
so if I click the subdomain there,
Oh, well, I guess I typed in the wrong. I don't know what the actual name is.
fine, I get it. I get what you're saying. And so so if I click on the podcast.chaos.community and episodes, I know that several have been recorded. What's the amount of effort to get it onto that episodes page?
Minimal.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're still building this out.
Right. And I think if I'm hearing what you're asking, Matt, you're saying like, so where are the current episodes? Is that correct?
Mhm.
And how do we
Yes.
get Yep.
So we have raw audio that's already sent over to Justin and gang. So our process is to download the audio, send it to them directly. They will edit it and send it back. And then we plug it into this page. The page auto generates. They also have, I think they do voice to text so that we have all that information in there.
Okay.
And we will eventually also have subscription links for all the different podcatchers in the world. So you can just land on this page, click on what you want, and auto register or an auto follow. But right now we're in the editing process, so nothing's published, and this is very minimalist.
So
Yeah.
basically, like they'll publish it on their infrastructure. You can do you download it or do you just link to their hosted site?
So their infrastructure is our infrastructure. We're using Fireside, which is wrapped underneath the podcast.chaos.community. So it's, yeah, we're all using that same backend service.
I see. So transfer of audio. It's just providing the link to the completed audio.
Exactly. Like I think we throw it in a Google Drive folder and they snag it from there. That's the plan.
Okay.
In the future, we don't even have to do that. We just go record and they pull it directly from Zoom because they control the Zoom channel.
Right. Thanks, Georg. Good point.
Okay. What Zoom channel is it?
The one that is in the invite that I just shared for the next episode.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the invite, it should have a consensus.zoom.us/ and then whatever the Zoom room number is. And it's
Right.
something that the CodeFund Podcast Network provided us with because it integrates into their automated process.
I see. So it's a different Zoom set than what we use for these weekly meetings.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, cool. Great. And honestly, again, thank you so much for both you, Matt, and Georg, for taking on a lot of these efforts.
I mean, I can't hat tip to Georg enough. He's a machine on organizing the stuff, but it's been really fun to see the progress, and I think we've really got a good sustainable system that once we get rolling, will continue to be rolling, and it will be easy for other people to hop in and be on the panel.
So how are we? What kind of presence are we wanting on the CHAOSS community website? I'm not understanding that completely.
So what I would like,
a link, I think.
what I would like is for the podcast to be listed in the menu. That's all.
Okay. All right.
And
let me know when you need that.
yeah, we can do that anytime. And by the way, I got access to the website as well now. The Linux Foundation gave me access.
Oh, did they give you admin access?
Oh, I didn't ask about admin access.
Would be nice if someone in the project had admin access.
But from what I'm understanding, we have to be a Linux Foundation employee.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the back to the community manager? Will the community manager be a Linux Foundation employee, or is that something
to be determined?
To be determined. Okay.
It'll be part of the negotiation process,
Gotcha.
Depending on the person, to be honest with you. One question I have for Matt or Georg, it's kind of more of a statement question, but I think what's your cadence of reviewing? What's your cadence of doing the podcast, like actually recording them versus your cadence of releasing them?
Go for it, Georg.
So currently we have 2 weeks recording and 1 month release
Okay.
cadence. And this was just so that we can skip a week, we have a pipeline, and we don't overburden ourselves in the beginning as we're building out the process. But I think we are very close to having the repeatable process, and Matt and I can share the load of organizing the recordings, and we would also look to onboard more hosts. So we were thinking of having 4 hosts, 1 for each week of the month, who organizes 1 episode. And then we have a pool of
A larger pool of panelists. Yeah.
many panelists, and then each episode we would have 1 host and 1 or 2 panelists join, and we can do 1 recording each week. And we can even release on a weekly basis because there are so many conversations that we want to have. If we look at the list of ideas we have for episodes, it's 2 years.
It's endless. I mean, I was just thinking the other day on my run, we could talk to, remember how CHAOSS.Con in Europe was a lot about how metrics are important for, say, scientific communities. I mean, there's a whole group of people that we could talk to in that regard. I mean, I was even thinking universities are starting to look at this, as to how they measure software outputs from research initiatives, as software as an outcome. Honestly, just because of the world I'm in, from a funding perspective, why do funding agencies care about metrics on the projects that they financially support? There are just so many different ways that we can go on this. Not to do it right now, but to your point, that there's years and years of conversations as to why understanding open source community health is important.
So one thought just listening to you that came to my mind is, if we do build this out, and there was another conversation, Vinya had mentioned that for building a following, it's really good to have some consistent people on the podcast that people can identify with and relate to. And so the whole changing hosts and panelists can be detrimental a little bit. I don't think that's a big issue here, but one way around that might be to have hosts that specialize in one area of CHAOSS. Like if you wanted to be a host, Matt, for talking about scientific CHAOSS cast episodes, whatever, and Matt Broberg wanted to do corporate, and do egalitarian, and someone else did tooling.
Yep.
We could have a rotation going on where we change the topics on a predictable schedule and have different sub themes within the topic. Maybe I'm thinking too complex.
No, you're dead on, Georg. I think we could ultimately have it's if you follow the changelog has the master thread. You subscribe, you get all of their sub podcasts. And I think if we do what we're planning to do and we can keep it up for a few months, we could look at ourselves and be like, all right, maybe we do have basically sub podcasts under this umbrella of CHAOSS Cast. So it's an absolute great idea. And yes, it's way too soon to do it, but we certainly have the ideas to get us there.
Right.
Yeah, I would happily be OSPO and DevRel centric as the topic, and I could see you being scientific or education. It just lends itself really nicely, get into tooling.
Yeah, there's so many people knocking on this door to understand metrics.
Yeah, and we all have our own motivations for being here, so I think that would reflect nicely in the audience. But first off, let's get a audience and some podcasts out there, and we can diversify from there.
Georg, we have just a few minutes. Do you want to talk about revenue, or is that to a little bit later?
So the CodeFund Podcast Network has a contract with Linode for providing sponsorship to all podcasts, and we would be part of this. This is financing the work that they do for us. And they're also on a mission to help open source projects be more sustainable. And so they want to share the profit. Anyway, they want to share some of that revenue. And so we still have a meeting later today to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, the TLDR on it too is that like they get 500 per podcast and they split it 50-50 with the podcast creators, which is exceptionally generous from what I've seen in other programs. And we just want to make sure that goes wherever like the governance board finds the right place to put it, basically.
I think they still take out their own expenses before they split it.
Oh, okay. So still, I mean, making any money on a podcast sounds dope after doing one for many years and self-funding.
Rate pay? It's not a per listen pay?
No, per episode.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I mean, so normally it would take you to have at least 20,000+ listeners before you start making around a $500 per episode charge. So like the fact that we're starting from zero and immediately making that is kind of insane.
That's why I asked.
Oh yeah. I know, it's wild.
All right. Cool. All righty. Well, thank you. That was a great update. So I appreciate it. The thing above, we'll talk about this next week. It was basically somebody had brought forward a way to think about all of the metrics associated with issues and how we think about issues in kind of a collective sense. So we are at the top of the hour. It just turned 12 noon on my computer, 12 noon Central. So thank you, everybody. This was great.
Great to see you all.
Have a good one. Soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.